welcome back to another great episode of the Red, White, and You Show with yours truly, the military medium. Today, I have a author, a veteran, just all around great guy, Eric Herrera. Eric is a Iraq veteran, and recently in July of 2020 came out with his book, A Bomb Hunter Story, his life clearing the roads of Iraq. And I thought, God, this is, it came out or actually the anniversary was in December, the 15-year anniversary of when he deployed. And of course, in July of 2020, the book came out, and I thought it was very serendipitous if we could arrange a interview. So, Eric, welcome to the Red, White, and You Show, man.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, take us a little bit into who Eric Herrera is. I read a little bit of, on your book. I understand you grew up in the north side of Chicago. Is the north side? See, I don't know Chicago. Is the north side the rough side, or is it where geographically when it comes to Chicago, how is it?
Mainly Chicago's distinguished between north and south side because we have the Cubs and the White Sox. So the Cubs are north side, and there is kind of a border.
Okay.
So yeah, Chicago's streets are made up in grids. So usually when you're on the north side, your cross streets are usually names, but when you hit the south side of Chicago, it's usually a named street crossed with a number. So that's when you get into the north and south side. I grew up in the north side of Chicago, but at heart I was always a south side kid because I had family on the south side, and I currently live on south side of Chicago.
Okay, very cool. And how was that growing up? You were saying you were a south side kid at heart, but you grew up in the north side. Was life pretty tough living in the north side and kind of being south side kid at heart?
Oh yeah, my family always gave me crap for it too, but I've been a Sox fan all my life, so living on the north side, I didn't have many friends that were Sox fans. But I grew up going to Catholic school, and I used to play sports in the Catholic leagues, and all those schools were all over Chicago. They were north side and south side. So I was spending a lot of time all over the city there in my high school days.
Okay. So you graduated, kind of left home and, did what a lot of young men and women do, go right into the military. You decided to join the Army. Take us into a little bit of that, kind of your early days, if you will, back bring the hands of time back a little bit, if you will, and share us.
Yeah, I had no intention of joining the military when I was a young kid. I went to Northern Illinois University for a year. I barely got into that school, and I decided not really to go to school. I was more interested in the party atmosphere and everything like that, and it was a real wake-up call for me that I got kicked out of Northern, and my mother wasn't very too happy about that. So she gave me an ultimatum, kind of, hey, you're gonna stay at home, you're gonna work, and then you're gonna go to community college. And I really didn't want to do that. So at the time, I actually had friends that just joined the military, and I figured, hey, why don't I give it a shot? And I talked with couple of recruiters. Some of my uncles were even former military as well. Both of them were in Vietnam. My Uncle Clyde, he helped me out a lot because I did not know he was actually a combat engineer too, which I ended up being. So hearing the advice from him was really helpful. And he didn't give me the push to go in, but to me, it just sounded something I wanted to do. I wanted to be away. I didn't want to stick around.
In college, weren't you on track to, or wasn't one of your premises, was it pre-med? What was it that you were going to do in college?
I wanted to take up accounting. I loved math.
Oh, okay.
And that was just something I did. And
Okay.
it kind of translated over to being a combat engineer because we dealt a lot with explosives, so
Right.
that calculations and things like that
Calculations, right?
uh, actually helped out.
Right. Um, absolutely. So so you went off to Fort Leonard Wood. I love the sweatshirt, by the way, the Leonard Wood barracks. Um, so let me ask you, why combat engineer?
When
What
I
what drew you to that MOS?
Well, if I would have joined infantry, my mother sure would have killed me. But I I looked at the description, and the description was very vague. It was um, clearing clearing mine obstacles and building fortifications. But that description was mainly described to like World War II and
Two,
Vietnam.
right? Yeah,
And so I'm
right,
like, you know what? Hey, I like building things, stuff like that. But the MOS evolved when the Iraq War was starting to happen. It wasn't clearing minefields anymore. It was finding IEDs that were being
right,
placed on sides of the
right,
roads and things like that.
right, right. No, absolutely. So one of your kind of in the beginning of the book was your time in basic training. Um, did you now before I jump into that, one of the things that I want to share is that you had a big interest, and maybe still do, I don't know, but in the medieval era, you talk about it in the book in the beginning, you know, the knights, the jousting, all that. How did that equate for you into the military per se? How did that correlate for you?
Yeah, ever since I can remember, always interested in the medieval era, learning about it in school.
Sure.
Um, when I was very young, my parents took me to medieval times, and I was just blown away by all that. Being a young kid, things like that.
Sure.
Um, the stories of King Arthur were always big with me, and things like that. And I don't know, I just was just drawn to that time period. But in the back of my mind, I never thought, hey, I'd do something. Yeah, join the military myself. But when as a kid, I always wanted to represent my country.
Mm,
I was fortunate enough to do that in sports and in the military too, as well.
sure.
So I mean, I can't complain.
Sure. Very cool. So going forward, when you went into basic training, take us into that aspect of because I know that, anybody that's been in the military, regardless of branch, has their own personal experience, if you will, from their point of view. Um, and but it's always unique, right? And so if you will kind of take us into that, because I think it's an important step for not only in the progression of your book but for you personally.
I think I had more of an advantage when it came to basic training. I was used to traveling. I was used to being away from home because with sports and everything like that.
Sure.
Be also being in a big city. Um, it's culturally diverse. And what I did not realize was that most of these guys that were in basic training with me are from tiny towns. They've maybe traveled once in their life on a vacation or seen someone of a different race before. That was kind of a big shock to me being from a big city. And I think I had more of an advantage to being comfortable in those situations. A lot of guys had to adapt and things like that. And if drill sergeants found out that you hated another race or you're kind of like homophobic or something like that, they would break that right away. They would make you bunk with a person of a different race that you didn't like.
Right, right.
So I mean, it sounds a little cruel, but I mean, hey, a lot of guys had lasting relationships because of that, which is
Absolutely.
great.
Right. No, very cool. And that's a great point too, is you know, the it brings up a great point that, it's really a melting pot, right? You get
Hmm.
people from, well, you get people from even other countries sometimes, right?
Yeah.
That join. A lot of people don't realize. I thought, Dean, I thought everybody had to be a American citizen. No, you don't.
Hmm. No.
To get a clearance, you would, but not to join the military.
No, we
Um,
had in my basic training we had a guy from Turkey,
oh,
and then when I ended up in Germany, we had at least about maybe 3 or 4 guys that were from Palau or the Pacific Islands, things like that. Also
yeah,
Puerto Rico. So I mean,
yeah,
yeah, no, they get into programs to become U.S. citizens.
yeah,
So I mean, you have to serve. I think it's 4 years or something like that at the
right,
time, and then you get your citizenship. But yeah, no, you
right,
don't have to be
right.
an American.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that, and it's great for them. A lot of people that are trying to maybe change whatever narratives going on in their life, but it really truly is a melting pot because you get people like you shared, Eric, from all over, and coming from a small town myself, it was certainly, I can speak what you were talking about from
Hmm.
firsthand experiences. You get a lot of experiences that you never would anywhere else, right?
Hmm.
So talk about your first duty station a little bit. We were talking a little bit before we came live. You got orders to go to Germany. I mean, who gets orders? Let me start there. Who gets orders to go to Germany right off the bat? I mean, that is some good pickings.
Yeah, so when you're in basic training, you get to pick 3 duty stations, things like that, I believe. Germany was on the top of my list, and I've been there before. I have family that's
Okay.
lived in Germany and things like that, so I knew the culture and everything like that.
Okay.
Um, at the time, uh, they were consolidating a lot of the bases in Germany, so there were combat engineers out there, and they were just moving them to Schweinfurt, which is where I ended up.
Okay.
I think, man, there must have been at least 40 of us that picked Germany, and all of us ended up in Germany.
Wow.
And then a couple weeks later, another group of 40 guys would come in. The unit there was practically nothing. So, yeah, the army was consolidating from bases from Würzburg, I think Nuremberg, and bringing us all together because they were gearing up for us for in the deployment.
Sure.
So that's how I ended up in Germany.
Wow. So you're in Germany, and you guys about go like you share about going back about 15 years, thereabouts. You get notification that you're going to Iraq.
Mhm.
Take us through that a little bit. Your first deployment.
That's one of the kind of controversial things I read in my book because we had a set date to go, and
Okay.
we ended up getting delayed about 8 months to a year, things like that. So
Sure.
things were kind of getting a little fishy. But then when we finally got to Kuwait, to the station area or staging area, um, something didn't seem right. I was getting word from guys that I knew up in headquarters, things like that, that the deployment was kind of being pushed. Um, that at the time there was people looking for personal gain, so higher up, so needing a deployment under their belt to
Ah,
move up in rank and things like that. And everything just seemed pushed. And the sad thing about it is that our deployment actually ended up being the deadliest deployment for any European unit in U.S. history.
wow. Okay. So you were saying, going back a little bit, that there was some controversial aspect of the deployment, and is that the aspect of some believe, or some of the, if you will, the rumor mill, that, or some of the word that came down as far as some of the higher ups, if you will, in um, some of the senior leadership was trying to get some extra deployments or deployments underneath their belt?
It was talked about, but I mean,
Okay.
you don't say it
Sure,
while you're in.
sure. And nobody's
But
certainly going to admit it. So there's certainly not going to be, I get that. And I'm not, and this certainly is not a conspiracy theory show. It's just,
mhm.
I'm just trying to get your perspective of it. And certainly at this time, you're what, probably E4, E3?
At the time, no, I was I was E3 at the time. Yeah,
Okay. So, it's interesting because everybody's perspective of deployment's different. Um, that E6, that E5, even E4, different ranks have their different perspectives, right?
hmm
And of each scenario and everything else. And it's interesting because, I just wanted to talk about it. There's other folks out there. And of course, my hope is this. I know everybody and their brother, if they're in the military pretty much by now, has been on some form of deployment. It's like a drop in the hat, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's but my hope is that Eric, is that by, if they're listening to your interview whenever in the future, it's maybe can help the next E3 or whomever, and saying this is a Ron Real, talk about your perspective from the time, growing up in Chicago to joining the military, kind of going through, and really, your aspect that you write about in the book.
hmm
Because quite honestly, it's a no bullshit, accounting of your experience. And,
Yeah,
if there was something that where it seemed off, if you, the way that you talk about it, everything wasn't normal, it seemed, whether it was rushed or whatever the case is, um you know a lot, soldiers can smell bullshit a mile away. That's what
oh
I'm
yeah.
trying to say. And
No,
some,
I tell everybody my book is a small chapter in a much larger book. Every soldier has their own story,
right,
and I mean, I the best I could say is I could help someone that
right,
get through some of those things that
right,
I went through
right,
and be prepared, because a lot
right,
of times we're not prepared and we wish we got that little bit more advice
right.
before we ever did it.
Well, moving forward, let's talk about your time in Iraq. We're still talking about the first deployment that went on. Everything's new and fresh for you. Kind of take us through a synopsis of your first deployment, and how that went for you.
So when we were in Kuwait, we were finally told what we would be doing. We were going to be doing route clearance in Baghdad. So we took some classes. There was some new equipment that we needed to learn. We were going to be handed special vehicles. Uh, some of the vehicles were RG-31s. They're very, very tall, very large vehicles. They were South African vehicles that diplomats would use to protect them from bombs and things like that. Another one of our main vehicles is also called a Buffalo. Um, I don't know if you ever seen the first Transformers movie.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
There's a scene where Optimus Prime is fighting a Decepticon on a highway, and that Decepticon is actually a buffalo. I mean, I could show you what it looks like.
Sure.
So this is kind of what it looks like right here.
There you go.
And the main usage of this vehicle is this gigantic hydraulic arm that we have. Um, if we ever come across an IED or something like that, we use this hydraulic arm to poke, prod, dig up anything that's suspicious to us. So that's our number one thing that we would always have. You would always know it was us based on that vehicle. We were the only ones that drove that. We also had other vehicles that were called a Husky. Um, it's mainly a one-man vehicle, and the whole purpose of it was underneath this Husky, there's metal detectors. But being in Iraq, there's trash everywhere. I mean, there's many landfills in the middle of the streets, things like that. So there'd be metal everywhere. So we had to get rid of those detectors, and we actually ended up using these Huskies as our lead vehicles. Um, the whole idea of it was that vehicle was bait. Sad thing to actually say that, but that's exactly what it was. It was better to have one casualty than three or four
Mhm.
casualties. It was
Well,
just some kind of hard truth we had to deal with.
well, and the Husky is designed to, at least the design of it is to deflect the blast, anyways, right? It's designed to kind of blow apart, so to speak.
Uh, yeah. The design of was if something did explode on it, that the Husky would fall apart. It's kind of like almost like a Lego almost, but sometimes it would work, sometimes it
Mm.
wouldn't.
Right,
Um, the enemy kept getting more and more creative with their IEDs, so I mean we had to adapt to that as well.
right, right. Um, so so you get this mission of route clearing, and where you guys kind of told to put away. You're not going to go out with doing mine clearance operations, right? Something completely outside of your RTEP manual. You know, how was that for you? I mean, you're talking about, usually the first mission is always, a, you know, not saying that not every mission is like you got the pucker factor of minus 1000, but, um, you know, kind of take us through that a little bit so people have a understanding of kind of your experience.
Yeah, like I said before, there's trash everywhere in Iraq, so our missions would last between 8 to 12 hours a day, and we would be going 5 miles an hour down the road, looking out the window at trash, anything suspicious, things like that. And it does get mentally draining at times because you're constantly looking. Um, Driving that slow can kind of put you to sleep too, as well. Um, and the thing was, is that if we ever found anything, we would use our buffalo, interrogate it, and if it ended up being something, uh, we put a perimeter around it. We used to be able to blow on sight, depending on the grade of the ordinance that we found. Um, but that died very quickly. The military said we were having too much fun. So they would have EOD units. So we would call them out. They would come out and take care of it with their robot and things like that. Sometimes we'd be sitting out there maybe an hour, 2 hours waiting for them to come out because depending on how far we are from the fob, uh, it could take a long time. So that's why these missions end up being 8, 12 hours long. Uh, During my first deployment, we were finding something at least every other day. That's how busy it was handling with these things. I know our first deployment, our unit ended up finding 126 IEDs, and
Wow.
that's not including the ones that have blown up on us or fake ones.
Mm, sure. Sure. Um, well, in the course of that, and you guys spent how long boots on ground in country?
We were told that we would be doing a 9 month deployment, and we ended up getting extended 3 times.
Oh
So
wow.
it ended up being 15 months.
Oh wow. Okay. So was that the first deployment?
Yeah,
Okay. And how long was the second deployment to Iraq?
12 months.
Wow. Okay. Um, and in the course of those, obviously, one of the things that the unfortunate cost of all this, you guys lost some good soldiers as well out of the unit as well, correct?
Yeah, we lost four brothers and a
Okay.
couple more to serious injury.
Okay. Um, that's a lot of people. There's, and I get it that the this crap's been going on for a long time now.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people out there that aren't military that, still maybe don't even fathom the true cost that our brothers and sisters are paying, daily, overseas. And and I understand that some deployments for some units are more costly than others when it comes to the number of lives lost. But um, you know, it's always, I believe it's always a great thing um, to remember those that have given their lives,
Mhm.
and not to to continue saying their name, and to mention their sacrifice. So
That's
um
another reason why I ended up writing the book, because
okay.
I still talk to the family members of
Okay.
my brothers, and over the years I found out that a lot of them weren't given the truth of what actually happened to them.
Mm,
uh, and I was actually there for both incidences that happened. One was uh, Christmas Day in '06, and then the other one was March of '07.
okay.
Um, and around the 13th anniversary of when it happened, a lot of guys started coming out and expressing their opinions on what happened, or
Okay.
kind of telling half truths, not exactly lies, yeah, but half truths, and um, saying different things that weren't right. Uh, and I wanted to set the record straight from my point of view of what actually happened. And
And
then
is that, oh, go ahead, sorry.
some of those families did not know what happened to their loved
Mm,
ones, and for years I struggled with those days, but they were always fresh in my mind. Every
sure.
detail was fresh in my mind, and I wanted to put it all down on paper. I did not want to hold anything back. I wanted them to know what exactly happened to their loved
Right.
ones. I
Right.
wanted them to have that closure of
Right.
knowing what happened.
So is that the original premise of the book, is to kind of set the record straight from your point of view? Is that the original um, purpose? Um, and obviously, there's, I'm sure, a lot of other reasons, but I was going to ask you. One of the questions is, like, why a book? Why did you write a book?
Yeah, that was one of the main reasons, but also myself, I was struggling too.
Okay.
Um, I, in December of 19, I actually had my final breakdown. Uh, I All the pain and the emotions just started flowing out of me during that time, and I felt like a kind of like a weight lifted off my shoulders. But I wanted people to know what I did because I was finally ready to say it. I started making videos of the incidences that happened, but I figured that wasn't gonna make a lasting effort. So I decided to, hey, I'm gonna uh, write a book, and I didn't hold back. I wanted every emotion that I felt, everything that happened. I wanted to put it down.
Mm,
And as I was writing, I could feel more and more relief in myself. Um, I was more at peace, not having to dwell on it anymore. It's all out down there on paper now, and that's where it's going to stay.
nice. Nice. Well, and you know, um, I just want to share first and foremost, thank you for deciding to stick around and you know share that challenging story, because I
Mhm.
know it's not easy to share that, but to have the courage to share, you know, your other story from your perspective,
Yeah,
and also your personal journey, right? Because
yeah.
being vulnerable sometimes is not easy.
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
no,
And that was one of the things that I thought I was going to be, but as I was expressing myself, my fellow brothers in the military were always there for me, always there to listen, things like that.
right.
And that also helped as well.
It's interesting you bringing this up, because one of the things that I did with the book, obviously, I was reading some of the comments of the reviews, And, it was just very uplifting, but very encouraging, talking about talking about how you saved this gentleman's life, and how he believed that the book will go on to save other people's lives. It's awesome to, and it's encouraging to hear that when somebody such as yourself has the courage through your own pain to share that story.
Mhm.
And then others can say, you know what, I'm not alone. Or, hey, I served with Eric and I thought I was alone in the struggle. And then they see you kind of, quote unquote, come out in sharing that story. Have you, a lot of other folks that you've served with since, have you since talked with them since the book has come out, and talked about their own journey and dealing with trauma and loss?
Yeah, I still do talk with many of them. A lot of them are actually still in.
Okay.
They're they decided to go with the whole 20.
Okay.
So and I'm there every step of the way for them too. A lot of them now are making first sergeant,
Sure, sure.
things like that. So I mean, it's great accomplishment for all of them. And yeah, this a lot of a lot of the things that I want after I wrote the book, I realized that I could actually help people that are out there.
Hmm.
When I left, the resources weren't really there. I mean, you leave, the army gives you a pamphlet, and it's kind of they send you on your way.
Right, right.
Um, I I always was trying to find help. I could never find it. After I left the military, I ended up going to college, back to college, and I came across a table in one of the lobbies, and it was a veteran resource center. And for 5 years, I had no idea that there was a veteran resource center 8 blocks away from my house that I could go talk to. And one day I'm like, you know what? I'm decided I'm going to go. I tried talking about what was going on, and at that point, I wasn't ready. I was kind of feeling nauseous as I was telling my story and things like that. And you're like, I'll be back. I'll be back one day. It's just now, it's just not the time. And that's one of the main things that's kind of wrong because you'll turn on the TV and you'll see a recruiting commercial to join the military, but you don't see any commercials about resource centers and where to get help. Um, I mean, there's veterans everywhere. Here in Chicago, they do every year the 22-mile ruck march for the veterans. I've done it. Um, I've done it once and also helped out if there was ever possible. But the thing is that number's actually going up. I know within the last year, it used to be 21. Now it's 22 soldiers a day commit suicide. Um, and that's something that really needs to be out there to help these veterans and things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. um Eric, where can folks go if they want to check out your book? Where can they check out more about you and your book?
My book is on Amazon. It's for paperback and Kindle. I'm also on Goodreads. Uh, if you type in the name of my book, A Bomb Hunter Story, My Life Clearing the Roads of Iraq, my book will pop up, and then there's my author page. People could ask me questions on there if they have any questions.
Well, perfect. Well, my guest today, Eric Herrera, author of A Bomb Hunter's Story. Eric, thank you so much. I really wish you well. And obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for your service, but thank you again, having the courage to write your story down, on paper and getting that out, and really being more than a story of your journey, but being a product of healing for those when, that are ready to take those steps.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.